Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for taking our press conference. I'd love to hear the minority leader actually know what the conservative policies of the Republican Party are. At least the Democrats know what the people of Missouri have charged us to do, and that's to protect our Constitution. You have a right to life. You have a right to your liberties, and that's exactly what the Missouri Republican Party has put in their platform as their number one issue. I'm glad the Democrats realize that. Unfortunately, our pro tem and our leadership of the Republican ranks does not understand that, and they have been tone deaf to what is going on in Missouri, what's about to be placed on the ballot in a deception campaign to deceive voters. See, that's exactly what is going on, and that's what we are combating. What you're seeing is a true fight. It really is a fight and a warring of minds. You see this, we wanted to bring these back up. They wanted to knock us for standing up and fighting for the issues that are important to Missourians. But Missourians want to see people that are fighting for this. Only 7% have got up and responded or even want to have a voice for their constituency. And then to see the antics of removal of chairmanships and removal of parking spots, threatening to remove our office furniture. And we just received a text that they have a phase 2 that they're potentially willing to go to. That's fine. We're willing to go to war for what is right for the Missouri voters that sent us here to do just that. We know that what's at stake. We realize that. Today we want to thank Caleb Rowden for doing the right thing and referring every single bill that was on the calendar. But if history repeats itself as it did last year, he was just like the speaker in referring bills only like 20 to 30 at a time, all the way till the end of session. We were not going to put up with that sort of antic yet again. So we had to force the narrative and force the process along. That's what was required of us. And the people, if you look at Twitter and you look at the social media and the outcrying of the grassroots and of the people who sent us here, they are by and large in favor of what we are doing. The senator from Boone's own county has reprimanded him, expecting and wanting him to resign because of his failed leadership. We're sick and tired of the failed leadership time and time again. And we are not going to stand idly by, wait to the very last hour of the very last day and hope to God they make the right decision. That is not what we're about. That's not what we are going to stand idly by and do. I mean, you even saw today the saber rattling of wanting to expel a member of this chamber. How outrageous, how far of the lengths will they go to silence the voice of the people of the state? We're not radical. We want to protect life. That's why we have supermajorities and why they're on the postage stamp down here in this chamber of the minority party, because they do not align with the values of the voter public at large. We are taking the message of the real, true majority of Missourians of protecting life. We want to advance these gubernatorial appointments. We want to do that. And we actually went to them before this all started and tried to put together a process to make sure that bills were moving, especially the IP process, the number one. And then we could get these things rolling and we could work in unison. They chose not to do that. They chose to play games, come out there and act like we're the bad guy. Because they know that we will call their bluff. I mean, they're like the schoolyard bully that wants to come up, punch you in the face, and then cry victim because you punched them back. That's exactly what we deal with day in and day out. And thank God they at least now have the intestinal fortitude to do it right here in front of you instead of behind the veil, behind the curtain, as we've dealt with for years. Caleb Rowden was right. It has been extremely difficult for 5 and 6 years of complete, total anarchy here. But it was at his helm and at his leadership and all his backroom shenanigans that led to all of this. I've been in this chamber for 12 years. I've seen Senator Crowell, I've seen Senator Shaw, I've seen other senators for years get up and hold up the floor. To act as though this is the most unprecedented thing in the Senate is erroneous and ridiculous. And you all have been here and you know that. So I hope that you realize and see through the malarkey that really is. What we saw with the governor with the budget process. Our budget is neither conservative nor common sense. It's higher than it has ever been. It's been doubled under his leadership. It's dangerous and it's ridiculous to put this onerous on the back of Missouri taxpayers. That's why we can't cut taxes. That's why these antics continue to happen day in and day out. Now I'll stop because I know everybody also would love to answer questions, but I appreciate being at least able to have the rebuttal of the nonsense that's been going on here in this Senate.
Are you going
Phase two, what's phase two? You said that there's a possibility of phase two.
We don't know. That's what the threat is. So,
Taking our furniture.
Potentially taking furniture, taking offices, you name it. Or even taking our chairs on the Senate floor. That's fine. We will stand regardless of what the cost is. That's where I don't think our leadership understands our mindset and how committed we are to doing the will of the people that we represent.
Are you going to let gubernatorial appointments through now that the bills have been referred, or does IP reform need to pass the Senate first?
So we explained with leadership the process of the expediting of hearings, getting things back up on the calendar. We went with them with several different paths in order to do that so we could move forward. And they choose time and time again and even came to us last night with a deal. We were like, okay, we think we can. And then boom, as soon as we start even saying that we're going to potentially even take the deal, they yank the deal and then come out here and want to play shenanigans yet again. So we're working our tails off trying to come to a solution so we can get these gubernatorial appointments done. Now, we did hear that there's other options to where withdrawal and redo the slate. Nobody's banned for life. Nobody's removed from anything, and the process will move along. It's not our fault that they're doing things to where they're stalling as they have year after year after year.
And to follow up on that, is it possible that if the leadership that you're talking about moves in a positive direction, maybe you would approve like Nodell and the Department of Mental Health, and then just keep the rest as leverage? I understand that those are the two biggest, but as you probably heard from my questioning, like the possibility that the leadership would have to change in those departments could have like major ramifications on state services. So what's kind of your thought about that?
Well, no, we would love to, and we attempted to do that. We attempted to do the entire first slate of them with all of them included in on that. They've been the one that's been reneging on all the negotiations where we would literally say, you agree, and they're like, yep, we no more than walk out of the room, and they changed the everything that we just negotiated. So we would love to get to that position, but they continue to want to stall the IP process because it's quite clear that our floor leader and even in the House, their leadership does not want to really pass IP reform. They want to get the talking points for their sound bites, but in the backroom deals, they're doing everything they can to kill it.
What does it matter if IP reform is passed, soon versus at the end of session?
Well, because we want to make sure that we get out there, we're able to have a message to explain to people exactly what's going on and what it is we're trying to address and fix, ensure that Missouri is kind of reflective of an electoral college in adopting a constitutional amendment and not just, the two population centers that are dictating for the entire state, where we're turning all of Missouri except for two locations into flyover country. And that's exactly the process that we have with our constitutional amending process. We need to fix that because nobody foresaw this when this was drafted into our Constitution, that out-of-state interests could put up $5 million and thrifty campaigns buy off a constitutional amendment, and it's outrageous, especially when we have life at stake. It's quite clear, even by the governor, stating that it is a victory, and people are, they're extremely happy to where we're at with, without abortion. We don't want to go back to where, up to the term of birth that abortions are allowed in this state.
Do you think there's still time for an initiative petition change to go into effect before the abortion vote?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's why we need to be, expedient in what we're doing and not wait till the last minute of the last day. Because as any senator knows, if you wait till the last day, you just have to stand up. And you have to stop it and you kill it. That's exactly what happened last year. We played nice all year last year. We sat down, we hardly filibustered at all over any issue. We played nice, we did that, and all we did was get knives in our backs the entire session. And so, at this point where there's so much at stake, gloves are off, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to protect life and to ensure that our Constitution is protected. That's what we swear an oath to protect and defend.
Is it your belief, it sounds like based on your statements, that you believe that the only way abortion would pass on an initiative on the ballot is if voters were somehow like hoodwinked by an outside group? Is that kind of your contention?
Oh, sure. That's exactly what happened with marijuana, especially the medicinal marijuana. They were able to frame it as though it was for veterans and so on and so forth. People didn't realize they were voting for 38 pages of a constitutional amendment. You're able to spin exactly what people are doing. And if you're not able to spread that out to where everybody has a say in that, I think it's ridiculous that we're amending our Constitution that all people abide by. They all swear an oath to protect and defend, and to allow direct democracy to occur. And that's what happens.
Going back to one of your statements about the state budget being too large, one of the things that the governor proposes a 3.2% increase for state employees. And we could quibble over whether that's enough or whatever, but is that something that the Freedom Caucus would agitate against, or do you feel like that would actually be a good use of state resources to pay state employees better?
Well, I think just pay for just work, I think is absolutely, correct. But we also have around 5,500 vacant positions that we still fully fund. Nobody's working there. So why aren't we able to look at, all this waste, all this bloat that's occurring already in these positions, in the line item of their pay and benefits, blah, blah, blah. Let's look into that. We don't have to go and start spending more money. We can go and really dive into the existing budget that has literally doubled in just a few short years.
I want to add on to the budget question, because Governor Mike Parson touted yesterday in his speech that he wants to leave $1.5 billion on the bottom line when he leaves office at the end of this year. Should that money be there, do you think that's the good thing to have $1.5 billion in an account for a rainy day?
Well, a budget having reserves is, it is fiscally responsible. But when we spend, billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that aren't ours, and then we strap it to the back of taxpayers, that's not fiscally responsible. They've got it to where we can't even cut taxes for like personal property. We can't cut those and really help the bottom dollar and bottom ends of our constituency by our bloated spending practices. So yes, there always needs to be a reserve, as with anyone having a savings account for the rainy day fund in their personal budget. But we have to look at the bloat in the budget, and that's what we have to address.
Can you clarify who had their parking spaces moved this week?
So it was Senator Hoskins, myself, Senator Eigel, and Senator Koenig.
And were there any
They're by
effects?
me now.
Not you.
I would love to show you a picture of my truck. I'm literally scraping the top of
Safety issue.
Yeah. So I hope the Senate may be paying for the damage to my truck of having to park down there
How would you
again.
describe the difference in your parking spaces before and then now?
Well, they're down by the river.
I mean, it gets to a bigger point. Do you think like these actions have backfired? Like it's kind of like from what you've heard, it's kind of made you into martyrs.
Again, it's so petty. I mean, this whole charade has been petty. It's actually laughable. We've had a good time about it, but it just shows. And apparently they were really close to even removing our office furniture. I mean, we would have had a lot of fun with that, and I'm sure the population at large would see just how erroneous and ridiculous the leadership is. The people saying they're the adults in the room actually acting like the spoiled little toddler that had their toy taken.
Could I just add to that, Jason? My wife is But my wife is actually pretty excited that I'm going to be getting a few extra steps in my regimen each day. So I just wanted to add that too. So there's maybe some positives there.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I'll add on to that too. You know, the overwhelming response from our constituents back home, from Republican Central Committees across the state, whether it's been Cass County, St. Charles County, Perry County, has been overwhelming in support of us. I've had so many emails, texts, phone calls, social media posts saying that, hey, what you're doing is right, fighting for conservative issues on the Missouri Republican Party platform, and they've been calling for a condemnation of our Caleb Rowden as well as Senator O'Laughlin. Now, I'm opposed to expelling anyone out of the Senate chamber, whether that's Republican or Democrat, for simply fighting for what your constituents want back home. In fact, I'm a little disappointed that looking at here that it says I'm only at 10%. I would disagree. I don't know
Pick
how
up
they
the pace a
calculate
little
it.
bit.
Yes,
Pick up
yes.
the pace.
So I hope to have a bigger percentage of that. But we're going to continue fighting for our constituents. We're going to continue fighting for those voters and people back home. You know, this isn't, they've turned this into a kangaroo court. And I know that Senator Rowden and I are running for the same position, both Secretary of State. But like I said earlier, he's using the same playbook that President Biden is using to silence Donald Trump by taking away my committees and my committee chairmanship. And so he's trying to silence me. And, you know, after the polling results that I saw this past weekend, I can see why he's doing that. He's doing everything in his power to be punitive and try and defeat me in the primary for Secretary of State this August.
So how did you guys hear about the furniture discussions?
So that was, I believe that was mentioned to a couple members of the Freedom Caucus by both members of leadership, that was under consideration. In fact, I think Senator Elaine Gannon was the one that recommended that on the phone call that we weren't invited to participate in back on Sunday. So I don't know if they're still, I can't speak to whether or not they're still considering that, but I can tell you I'll sacrifice every piece of furniture in my office if it gets IP reform done in this state. Just want to make the real quick point. You look at these graphs up here, and I know that the leadership put these graphs up here, and their intention, of course, is try to embarrass us, or I guess put aspirations on us. But I just want to make the point today that all of those bills got filed today. All of those bills got referred today. Every single one of those bills, every SJR on IP reform, every one of the bills that were referred on tax policy. We had the bill that may lead to disqualification of President Biden got referred today, and we weren't expecting that. All of that happened because of what you see in these two charts. Not in spite of what you see on of these two charts, but because of what's happening in these two charts. Because there's a few folks, 93% of the time is being spent by a few number of people that are fighting for our principles. And so, I guess my question is for the 7% up there, I guess the question's going to have to be answered by those senators. Why aren't they fighting for their constituents? Why aren't they fighting and spending more time on the floor pushing their priorities? I think they also made a mistake by leaving me their talking points up on the podium. And I want to, their three main points. Their number one point here, and I'll distribute a copy of this to anybody in the media that would like to have this afterwards. They have three main points. Apparently, one, that a small group of legislative terrorists are preventing the Missouri Senate from passing conservative legislation. Well, as I just said, because we're doing what we're doing, we're willing to being bold on it. And as you see, we're willing to stand up and not be silenced by these guys. Well, these things are moving as of today. Their second one, their point is behind us are graphs showing the self-serving nature of these career politicians. This is their second main point. But what it's actually showing is that at least 7 Republicans are willing to actually do what they said they were going to do. We're not going to take guff from anybody from what we see as the status quo in this city. And then their third one, over 93% of the time spent on the floor has been wasted by this group of senators. Well, I tell you what, because we were willing to stand up 93% of the time, every one of those bills got filed today. And finally, for the first time this session, IP reform is in committee, and it's because of the people you see up here on the stage. So we also have facts from this. I'm going to distribute this, by the way. If you'd like to have their talking points, it calls us names and reduces the conversation even further to a more petty level. That there's I'm going to lead these guys. I'm going to distribute this, get copies of this. I'm going to make sure every member of the press has this, and you are welcome to approach any of the other members. By the way, I'll say one other thing. I'm not sure that every member, that we talked about the different factions in the Missouri Senate. There's 3 factions in the Senate. Senator Luetkemeyer and I talked about that on the floor yesterday. I believe that even more strongly, and I can tell you, I spoke to a couple of my colleagues who find themselves in the middle faction of the Senate after the session today. They were appalled at what Senator O'Loughlin did. Appalled. You heard the Democratic floor leader, and by the way, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the Democratic floor leader. Even though we disagree vehemently on policy, he's never lied to me. And you heard him say at his press conference today that not even he, in spite of having all those policy differences, would be willing to expel a member of this chamber that was duly elected by the people. I think that is an outrageous indictment of the leadership team that we have. And I tell you, I want to apologize to my colleagues behind me. I feel like I can produce better numbers than what you're seeing on these charts, and you have my commitment that I'll make that a priority next week. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, guys.